Look at your dog right now. Or if you don't have one, picture one. Picture it doing that thing dogs always do, curling up next to you, following you from room to room for no reason, staring at you like you're the most important thing that has ever existed on this planet. Now ask yourself a genuinely strange question. Where did that come from? Not the dog specifically, the behavior. That loyalty, that need to be near you, that almost desperate attachment to a creature that is, biologically speaking, a completely different species. Because here's the thing, that dog's great-great-great ancestor going back far enough was a wolf. A wild, pack-hunting, territory-defending, genuinely dangerous apex predator. And somewhere in the deep dark of human prehistory, that wolf looked at us and something shifted. Something changed. And the result of that change is currently asleep on someone's couch wearing a little sweater. How does that happen? How does one of nature's most effective killing machines turn into an animal that will press its head into your lap when you're sad? How did ancient humans, people who hadn't invented writing yet, hadn't invented agriculture yet, hadn't invented basically anything yet, accidentally engineer the most successful interspecies relationship in the history of life on Earth? This is not a simple story. It never is. But it might be the most important story you've never been told properly. And it goes back further than almost anyone realizes. Let's go. Start with the timeline, because the timeline alone should stop you in your tracks. For a long time, scientists estimated that dogs were domesticated somewhere around 15,000 years ago. That's already ancient. That predates the pyramids by over 10,000 years. That predates the earliest known cities. That predates farming. But newer genetic research keeps pushing that number back. A 2021 study published in Current Biology analyzed ancient wolf genomes from across Europe, Asia, and the Americas and suggested the domestication process may have begun as far back as 23,000 to 40,000 years ago. Let that land for a second. Dogs may have begun diverging from wolves before the last ice age reached its peak, before humans had figured out how to plant a single seed, before we built permanent shelters. We were nomadic hunters living in a world full of megafauna, mammoths, cave lions, giant elk, and somewhere in that world, the relationship that would eventually give us the golden retriever started quietly forming. That is one of the most astonishing facts in all of natural history. And almost nobody talks about it. Now, here's the part where you have to throw out everything you probably think you know about how this happened. The popular version of the story goes something like this. Some ancient human found a wolf pup, brought it back to camp, raised it, and boom, domestication begins. It's a nice story. It's clean. It's the kind of story that makes sense to modern humans who think about dogs as pets. It's also almost certainly wrong. Not completely wrong. But the cleaned up, intentional version of it, the idea that some clever prehistoric person sat down and decided to domesticate wolves, that's fiction. Because domestication doesn't work that way. You can't just grab a wild wolf pup, raise it around humans, and produce a domestic dog. Wolves raised by humans are still wolves. They're still wired for the wild. The behavior you'd need to change isn't learned. It's genetic. And changing genetics takes generations. Hundreds of them. Possibly thousands. So if it wasn't a deliberate human plan, what was it? The answer is something far stranger and more interesting. It may have started with the wolves themselves. Here's what researchers now believe actually happened. Think about what early human camps looked like. You've got a fire, which we've already established, terrifies basically everything wild. You've got a group of humans, which we also know now radiates a deep ancient fear signal into the surrounding ecosystem. And around that camp, you've got waste, bones, scraps, discarded food, caloric leftovers from hunts. For a hungry wolf on the edge of starvation, that pile of scraps represents something extraordinary. A food source that doesn't fight back, a caloric windfall that requires zero hunting energy. But accessing it means getting close to humans. And for most wolves, the fear of humans outweighs the reward. They stay back, they watch from a distance and move on. But not all of them. Some wolves, a small subset, had a slightly different nervous system, a slightly lower flight response, a slightly higher tolerance for human proximity. These wolves were bolder, or maybe more accurately, less afraid. And those wolves were the ones who actually got close enough to the camp to eat the scraps. Those wolves survived better, got more calories, raised more pups. And here's the critical part. That lower fear trait, that higher tolerance for human presence, passed to their offspring. Not perfectly, not all of it, but enough. Over generations, the wolves hanging around human camps were increasingly drawn from a population that was, at a genetic level, less afraid of us. This is the moment. This is where it begins. Not with a human making a choice, with a wolf making one. There's a famous experiment that proves this process works faster than anyone expected. In 1959, in the Soviet Union, a geneticist named Dmitry Belyaev started selectively breeding silver foxes. He wasn't interested in any trait except one, how the foxes responded to humans. He took the foxes that showed the least fear and aggression toward people, bred them together. Took the calmest offspring, bred those together, and repeated the process generation after generation. Within just 10 to 15 generations, something remarkable happened. The foxes weren't just calmer. They were different. They started wagging their tails at humans. They started seeking human contact. They started whimpering when humans left. They showed up with floppy ears, spotted coats, and curly tails. Physical changes that nobody selected for, that just appeared alongside the behavioral shift, as if the entire package of dog-like traits was bundled together somewhere deep in the genome, waiting to be unlocked by a single change in temperament. This is called the domestication syndrome. And it tells us something profound about what happened with wolves. The early wolves that tolerated humans weren't just becoming tamer. They were beginning, slowly, across hundreds of generations, to unlock a suite of biological changes that would transform them into something genuinely new. Something that had never existed before. Something that would eventually learn to read human faces, respond to human pointing, understand human emotion, and curl up on human feet while they slept. Now, here's where it gets even more interesting. Because at some point in this process, something shifted in the relationship from wolves tolerating humans to wolves actively being useful to them. Think about what a wolf is. It has a sense of smell roughly 10,000 times more sensitive than yours. It can hear frequencies you can't. It can move silently through terrain that would announce a human from 200 meters away. It can track prey across miles of landscape. It can work in a coordinated group with complex communication. For a band of human hunters trying to survive on the edge of an ice age. A wolf that trusted you even a little was not just a scavenger at your campfire. It was a force multiplier. A group of humans hunting with even semi-cooperative wolves could track game they'd have never found alone, could run down prey over distances no human sprinter could match, could receive an auditory alarm system at night that no amount of human vigilance could replicate. And here's the part that's genuinely hard to wrap your head around. Ancient humans were not passive in this process once the initial bond started forming. The moment wolves began showing up reliably around camps, humans began, consciously or not, shaping which ones stayed. The wolf that snapped was driven off. The wolf that let children approach it was fed. The wolf that came back was welcomed. The wolf that bit was killed. None of these were decisions made inside a breeding program. None of them were intentional genetic interventions. But cumulatively, across thousands of human generations, they were exactly that. Humans were selecting for the traits they preferred without knowing what selection even was. They were doing biology before biology had a name. Here's a myth that needs to be put down directly, because it comes up constantly and it's completely backwards. The myth is that dogs are basically just tame wolves, that the difference between a wolf and a dog is primarily that one has been socialized and one hasn't. that if you raised a wolf right, it would be more or less like a dog. This is wrong in ways that matter. Dogs are not tame wolves. They are a separate category of animal, a genuinely distinct creature that has been shaped by tens of thousands of years of coevolution with humans so deeply that their cognition works differently. Their social instincts work differently. Their relationship to hierarchy and communication and emotional attunement works differently. Here's the most striking evidence. Researchers at the Family Dog Project in Budapest have run experiments comparing the social cognition of dogs, wolves, and human children. In one classic test, they put food under one of two cups and gave the subject a cue, a human pointing at, looking at, or nodding toward the correct cup. Wolves, even wolves raised by humans from birth, largely fail this test. They don't reliably follow human communicative cues. They don't look to humans for social information in the way dogs do. Dogs, including puppies that have had almost no human socialization, pass it easily. They follow a pointing finger toward the right cup not because they learn to, but because reading human communication signals appears to be something dogs are born knowing how to do. This is not a trained skill. This is evolution. Dogs have been living alongside humans for so long that their brains have physically restructured to be attuned to us. The same way our brains are attuned to reading human faces, dog brains are attuned to reading human intentions. We grew toward each other. We changed each other. Now here's the honest part, because this story would be incomplete without it. There is genuine scientific disagreement about where exactly dog domestication happened. And it's not a small disagreement. For years, the leading theory was that dogs were domesticated in East Asia, somewhere in what is now China or Southeast Asia, based on genetic diversity studies in modern dog populations. Then, a major 2013 study argued for Europe, based on ancient wolf DNA. Other researchers pointed to Central Asia, the Middle East, or suggested it happened independently in multiple locations. The most recent genomic work suggests something more complicated, that modern dogs may descend from a single domestication event, but that ancient dogs then mixed extensively with local wolf populations as humans migrated across the world, which means the dog you picture, the platonic idea of a dog, emerged from one lineage but then was continuously shaped and reshaped by contact with wolves in every new environment humans carried them into. This is messier than the clean origin story. It's also almost certainly closer to the truth. Evolution is not a single event. It's a process that never fully stops. And dog domestication may still, in some small technical sense, be ongoing. There's one more layer to this that almost never comes up when people talk about dogs and humans, and it's maybe the most mind-bending part of the whole thing. We think of domestication as something humans did to wolves. Humans selected, humans bred, humans shaped. But the evidence increasingly suggests this framing is too narrow. Because while wolves were being shaped by proximity to humans, humans were being shaped by proximity to wolves. Think about what changes when your group has dogs. Your perimeter security improves. Your hunting efficiency improves. Your ability to track and retrieve game improves. Groups with dogs outcompete groups without dogs. They get more calories. They survive harder winters. They raise more children. Those children grow up alongside dogs, grow more comfortable with them, more skilled at reading them, more dependent on them. Over thousands of years, humans who were good at working with dogs did better than humans who weren't. Which means selection pressure was running in both directions. Dogs were evolving toward us. And we may have been evolving, at least culturally and possibly biologically, toward them. There is research suggesting humans have unique genetic variants related to the way we produce oxytocin, the bonding hormone, that differ from our closest primate relatives in ways that might reflect our long cohabitation with dogs. When a human and a dog make eye contact, both experience an oxytocin spike. That's not an accident. That's co-adaptation. Two species that have been rewiring each other's chemistry across tens of thousands of years of shared life. There's also the cognitive angle. Some anthropologists have argued that the tracking and hunting advantages provided by early dogs may have been significant enough to influence human cognitive development. that the partnership freed up human mental bandwidth, offloaded certain kinds of sensory processing, allowed for more complex social and strategic thinking. This is speculative and contested, but the underlying premise is not. When two species become deeply interdependent, they change each other. The relationship doesn't flow in one direction. We didn't just create dogs. We created them. And they, in some quiet way, were still trying to understand, helped create us. So here's where we land. A terrified wolf, braver than its peers by just a fraction, crept toward a fire it should have fled, ate bones it should have ignored, and started something it could not have understood. Humans who had no concept of genetics, no word for evolution, no framework for what they were doing, kept feeding the wolves that came back and driving off the ones that didn't. And over tens of thousands of years, across ice ages and migrations and the slow grinding shift of civilizations rising and falling, that accidental experiment produced something the world had never seen. An animal that wants to be near you. Not because it's trapped, not because it has no other option, but because over 40,000 years of shared history it has become. At the level of genes and neurons and hormones made for human company. An animal whose brain genuinely lights up when it sees your face. An animal that will choose proximity to you over almost anything else, including freedom. That thing asleep on your couch or in your bed or pressed against your leg right now is not a tamed predator. It is not a domesticated wolf. It is something entirely new. The first animal in the history of Earth that chose us as completely as we chose it. And it started with one cold, hungry wolf making a calculated gamble on a species it had every reason to fear. Turns out, for both of them, it was the right call.